This is Bleav in Buckeyes. I'm Bryant, an All-American cornerback, Chekwa. We got a great show for you guys. We got information and data points on how college football is changing, especially around our beloved school, the Ohio State. But gotta check in with my guy first, man. How you doing, man? You got a nice. I've probably seen that before, but it looks good today. How you doing, Chum? What's going on?
I'm doing good, man. Coming off a great Father's Day. Spent all day in the sun at a track meet. All right, getting my daughter out there competing. All right, how was your Father's Day weekend, man?
Man, it was good, man. It was nice and chill, man. I got meals, I got gifts, I got stuff for around the house, hung out with the kids, so it was pretty chill. My second, we're supposed to go to church. My middle child got a little sick. He always gets sick, but we missed church because of it. But it ended up being still a good day over and all. And yeah, man, I was very grateful for my family, man. I felt like my family loves and support me. Like, I guess as I should at this point in life, right?
yeah. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I spent my Father's Day being a father.
There you go.
I didn't get the day off.
Yeah.
So,
that's
what it's for. That I proved my fatherhood.
You gotta earn it, man. You gotta earn it. But yeah, man. But around Ohio State, our AD Ross Brooke had a press conference to kind of talk about everything that's going on, right? And obviously the huge ruling with the NCAA kind of stating that schools are, first off, they owe money, right, to some former guys, but most importantly, that they have a $20.5 million budget to kind of move through the season, well, at least this season coming up. And Ross kind of gave some details on it, but I think the first thing is kind of talk about the quote on, what will remain the same. Athletes will still go to class to earn a degree, as in players will still play in games. So, another thing, everything after that is up in the air for change, but those two things will remain. But I think the first thing that he kind of went into is that Ohio State is keeping all sports. Right now they're not making any cuts. I know it's always kind of been up in the air on how things are going to land. If something's not making money, if it's, considered a cost on the books, how's that going to play out? But right now we got a commitment from our AD that we're keeping all 36 varsity sports here at Ohio State. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it feels good. It also feels interesting. I think 36 varsity sports at Ohio State. I think that's the number of total sports. And I think you go into this process with kind of this altruistic approach of, we don't want to get rid of no sports. We don't want to get rid of no scholarships. We want to continue to give individuals the opportunity. I'm not sure how long it lasts, and I would say they probably aren't sure either, no matter what is said, because everything is new. So, 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road, we might let go of fencing or something. I don't want to call nobody out, man. Shout out to all the fencers out there.
Shout out to the fencers out there.
Yeah. We want to keep the fencing, but there may be some casualties, or it just may transition into more of like a intramural type competition where you don't got the scholarship, but you can still compete in that sport. But you don't have any scholarships set aside for your sport. And I think that the total number right now is 2.5 million, I think, of that 20.5 million is going to 91 scholarships for all the sports outside of football, men and women's basketball, and volleyball. Is that right?
Women's volleyball. Yep, and women's volleyball. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this is, you can have a tad bit of a side. I don't think we don't want to lose any sports, right? And it sounds, cliche, but we're true Buckeyes here. We want to, we're known for, having the best synchronized and swim team in the nation, right? They win nationals like every year. Our rifle and pistol team, they win a lot of national championships as well. And, then every 4 years we had Olympics, and you see all the Buckeyes, right? That gets to compete in the Olympics and, in different type of sports, and you support it. But like you say, when it comes down to it, this is, student work, athlete work, right? And, now it's kind of transitioned a little bit to business. And with business, as things, you start looking at books and, decisions start to be made. But I think we're kind of trying to approach it the right way. I think, like you say, things would look different in 4 or 5 years. But I know one thing for sure, if we win a couple more national championships in football, things probably could stay the same. if our football team or I think our basketball team, they got a little bit more to show in themselves in general. I think our women's doing pretty good with our guys. They could do a little bit better. But if them things are starting to slack and fall behind, I think that's when those kind of decisions are kind of coming up to be discussed. But if we still are, king in certain areas, I think everyone will feel a little bit more comfortable about, kind of keeping things as is and not, so much jumping the ship. But as we know, let's say Alabama start cutting sports and all of a sudden they're back to being king of football and we don't feel like we can compete. People just in business, another thing you learn is it's a copycat world.
Right. Exactly.
And if it's successful over here, then you kind of start figuring out ways, to kind of implement it as well. So,
that's all it takes. That's all it takes is University of Miami say, you know what, we're just going to lock in on football and basketball for the next 10 years and see how that goes. And they start competing at a high level. And then others say, you know what, we got to do something different. I do want to give a shout out to women's volleyball. I want to give a shout out to women's volleyball. I remember I was, listening to the press conference and what's, how they're going to divvy up the money. And I heard 4 football, men and women's basketball, which you expect, and then women's volleyball. And if you look at the numbers, women's volleyball in terms of NIL has brought in a decent amount of money. And if you also look at, you go younger, high school, AAU, women's volleyball is a very competitive league in terms of AAU. Ton of girls out there trying out, paying a lot of money to get, to try out, play on the team, make the team. But yeah, they're generating some funds, they're getting some money. So yeah, that was kind of cool to see.
They got a pro team now. Columbus got a pro. I took my daughter to a professional volleyball team. So shout out to the Columbus Fury. We had a great time, good environment. We lost that game, but
So what I'm saying is some of these other sports they got to put some work in. They got to put some work in. And I think, in this day and age with social media and, TV is no longer, a lot of people don't watch live TV anymore, right? You watch it whenever you watch it. There's not too many moments where you can just show up and view something live, right? We watch it. We see it when we see it. We see the clips on social. They got to engage the community. Like some of these different sports, right? I mean, there's a kid at home who could grow up fencing, right? There's a kid at home who could do rifle, right? I don't know at what age you got to be to start shooting a rifle, but I've seen some people shoot the gun really young.
Right? You start them young, man. Yeah.
I'm not promoting it, but there's some who can handle it, right? So, I think, when it comes to Ohio State athletic department, if we're gonna keep 36 sports, you got to do some work. You got to really get some more engagement in some of these other sports, whether it's doing camps, whether it's, if you're a college level athlete, you have made it to that top whatever percent in your field. Get out there and train some younger athletes who maybe weren't even thinking about some of these sports as an opportunity, but now they become one. So, they got to make some money. They got to drive some revenue.
No, I know.
Because 5 years down the road, when they start making cuts, you might be the first one to get cut, and that's just the reality of it. That's the reality of the situation. I don't want to see it, but that's the reality.
That's real. No, but I mean, Russ is aware of this, right? I mean, one of the quotes of his press conference is that he states that we need more content, and that's just kind of goes piggyback off what you just stated. Like, we need more eyes on our athletes, so everyone could get an understanding of what it takes to be a Big Ten tennis player, for example, or what it takes to be, running the track and field. I know our women's track and field, I've seen them this past weekend competing at the national level in several events. But, the more content that's out there to understand what is that training looks like, here, what is the diet looks like to be this kind of athlete. You get it for some of these high-end sports, especially around, let's say, football, what we're here to talk about mostly. You get it. Like, you kind of learn it, right? You start hearing some of these things. You got to, but you got to understand that some of these other sports, they do the same thing. Maybe they're just more extreme. They go even harder. You start talking about wrestlers and, weight cuts and things of that nature, things they have to go through, to kind of check those boxes. Content matters. So that's something I guess AD is being, keeping in mind that we need more of. And once again, to kind of, keep everybody popular, keep everybody having the opportunity to generate. Because the next thing to kind of just think about is now that we have something in play, right, across really essentially the nation, how does Ohio State football look in the NIL world? Like before, it's kind of rumor, Ohio State spends the most. And we could debate it, right? No one really had a number, but, you could imagine we was in the upper echelon when it came to spending. But now it was more of a centralized playing field if we know everyone is coming with XYZ number to the table, to go towards their football team. How do you think that's going to position us to compete? Or is all of a sudden you think Purdue is really back in the mix and stealing a couple of recruits from Ohio State that we had our eyes on?
Yeah, Purdue. So Purdue has got passed up by Indiana. So they're not in the mix. But Indiana, legit, are they here to stay, given that there's basically a salary cap now. It's a salary cap that's at $20 million. And that salary cap is for all sports, right? So what Ross said is 2.5 go to 91 scholarships for those other sports, 18 million for the four that were mentioned. So 18 million for about, what you say, about 200 athletes, or maybe some.
I wouldn't say 200. I'm gonna say about, I think football to get 105, right? You probably got 10 per basketball team, so that gets you about 20. A volleyball team, I think you play 6 at a time. So let's say you got 8 there. So you're out. You're under 150. You're under 150.
You say 150, right? 150 scholarships. I don't know. Let's try to do some quick math. Somewhere around, I don't know.
Yeah, we ain't about to do that math. Right. I just did math, man. I don't have to be back to back math, probably.
Right. So 150 scholarships. Let's say 100,000, or give or take a few tens of thousands of dollars for every player. If you split it up evenly, that salary cap potentially limits how much a player can make. But then at the same time, there's still the opportunity based on a player's potential brand value that they can make well above that money that's paid to them directly from the school. So it's like this imaginary salary cap that exists, that you can go well above and beyond. And that's where a third party service is going to determine whether or not the amount that's paid to a certain player is legit, given what they're valued at. And that's where things get tricky to me, because how much is Jeremiah Smith worth in terms of brand value, right? If you're the best player in college football, or top 2, top 3, top 5 players in college football, and you're the guy who, when they do the big time, big noon kickoff that, Fox is featuring on ads and, prepping for a game, etc. You're the guy that all the reporters want to talk to. You're the guy who's driving players to kids and parents to buy jerseys, etc. I mean, is there really a cap on that value? Like, where do you stop the value? And before, obviously, teams are going to pay Jeremiah Smith a certain amount based on, what they feel like they can afford to pay versus how much he's going to produce for them. But now, based on his potential value, is there a limit to what a Jeremiah Smith? What do you think? What would be Jeremiah Smith's value in terms of what he brings to Ohio State?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's funny that you say that. I mean, we know that the NCAA has basically brought in a consultant to kind of look at value, right, when it comes to this pure NIL deals from the private sector coming into college sports. But like you said, you're talking about Jeremiah Smith. Are you starting to compare him to Justin Jefferson, like his contract that he has with the Vikings, right? Or some of those Bengals wide receivers, and all the money that they bring in. It's laughable, but at the same time, I think we could agree that Ohio State, their brand, like some of these top college teams, is equal or maybe even surpass some of these NFL rosters, right? So you start looking at what they have and what they get paid, and obviously, much different. But now we're just talking about what the value is, right? You have to kind of say, like, okay, well, what does Justin Jefferson get for an ad, or whoever has a shoe deal, or their spot with Adidas or New Balance, what does that figure look like? And to me, it's fair to be brought to the table. So like once you start getting that type of information and bringing it in, like you say, the number for summer, a guy like Jeremiah Smith could essentially skyrocket, where that some of this stuff is kind of going in to try to put some type of limit, some type of cap that shouldn't be surpassed, but it could easily backfire if you're really looking at the numbers and what the value a guy brings to the school and the program.
Yeah, and I think what you get when you bring a third party in is you get kind of this plausible deniability of whether or not you're influencing where the values are capped at. It's like, yeah, let's bring this third party in and let them help us create a cap, and we can always distance ourselves and say the third party made that decision. It wasn't actually us. I find it hard to Bleav that there's going to be an effective way to really value the athlete from who they bring in. And whenever you bring in a third party, I always say, who's paying them? Because based on who's paying them determines whether or not they're truly third party or not. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting in how the money continues to be deployed. And does Ohio State have the advantage or not? Well, if Ohio State has the biggest brand and you determining player valuations based on their individual brand while they're wearing Ohio State uniform, they're going to continue to have that advantage just from the money side. And then you could bring in all the other elements of being able to come into Ohio State. But I do think, and the American Athletic Conference, I think, was one of the – is American Athletic wherever conference Temple was in.
Yeah, they change conference every 2 or 3 years.
They put a floor in of, I think, $10 million, where you got to at least pay out $10 million. They're not one of the Power 4 or Power 5 conferences, so they didn't necessarily have to opt into the settlement, but they did. Or a lot of the schools within that conference are opting into the settlement. Then they put a floor in and say you have to pay at least $10 million. So I do think certain schools who were prepared or will benefit from the fact that we're at least participating. Like, we're not in the Power 4, Power 5 conference, but we're participating in this. And now you can make a decision, based on the fact that you're going to get paid, like you're going to get some money. So it's definitely a big change. I'm skeptical, and I anticipate more lawsuits.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we talked about that before. Yeah, they'll come, but they'll be slow, right? This stuff take years to kind of get up with a settlement. Maybe if you make certain decision quick, somebody will, appeal and, that whole process. And then one thing for sure, like, before the players had all the sympathy because they was getting $0. Now, that sympathy kind of goes away. But like, look, he made XYZ, and maybe he could have made XYZ plus one, but he did do so. It'll be years to come for it. But one thing for sure, the schools is already, and Ross is one of them, is like the state is concerned about making more money, right? So we kind of keep this this model going of keeping all 36 sports and being able to kind of divvy up between some of the the top 4 sports, let's put it like that, however you want to say it, for Ohio State. And with that, you start to kind of talk about the college football and the expansion of the playoffs. Should it go to 12, 14, 16 teams? He did have a number in mind. He said he could be swayed in many directions, but when it came down to it, though, he's for expanding those playoffs because in his mind, it brings more eyes, more views, more money to college football to kind of keep things going. I know we've been a little bit against it, but what's your thoughts on that and then moving forward? And
it's getting to a point because at the end of the day, the most money comes from TV. Right? It comes from viewership of the games, and the easiest way to bring in more dollars, is just play another game. And the more competitive the matchup of that game, the more money's brought in. So obviously the playoffs. So I think it's inevitable that playoff expansion happens. How it happens, I think that's kind of to be determined. But it feels like the big conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten, are in the best position leverage-wise to kind of create the best benefit for themselves, to get the most teams in year and year out, and also to drive the most money back to their conferences. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. I'm kind of against continued expansion year to year without actually playing out what we're currently doing. I don't like too much. I'm fine with the change. I just want the change to be change that is mostly beneficial, right? And a money-driven change provides some benefit, but without considering the other effects can actually be less beneficial than what we initially thought. So I think there's going to be some expansion. I also think that the way they expand, they just need to do it in a way that is thoughtful when it comes to how many games are being played in total. Because based on the amount of games that are being played, that is going to impact the individual player safety, as well as a bunch of other things, even just the quality of the games. And then based on those games, amount of games being played, how much are players getting paid for? Right? If you're going to add games, look like the NFL. In the NFL, the NFLPA is negotiating for more money. The NFL is like, okay, we're going to add more games. If we add more games, we got more money to spend. It's as simple as that. So I think, those that plays a factor. But it feels like, I don't know what your take is, it feels like the SEC and the Big Ten are going to lock in more teams in those college football playoffs to compete. The SEC has been loud about it. The Big Ten has been relatively quiet.
But they've been pretty quiet. But I think this proves it, right? Ohio State's AD, which is obviously the biggest brand in the Big Ten, states that he's for it. Essentially, you almost could write it down. It's going to happen. Now, he did state that they're still open for some discussions around structure. Whether that means we're getting rid of maybe that conference championship game. I think that's the easy one we could kind of move from. I'm sure it got some sponsorship dollars tied to it and contracts that they need to kind of run the course on. But I hope that's something that they kind of keep in mind. And that's something, once again, Ross is he's in tune to, that he's kind of paying attention to as well. Because they're looking at, once again, where it really is with the Big Ten and SEC, the funniest thing is like they're looking at automatic qualifiers, right? You know what I mean? It's like, write it down that we get these amount, no matter what's going on in the country, no matter what these teams look like, we're getting a certain amount in every year, deal with it. And it's almost like that's what the SEC has been kind of, I guess, campaigning for. Once again, they've been pretty loud about it. Big Ten has been kind of quiet about it, but you got to imagine wherever the SEC is thinking, they're thinking the same, and that's what they're going to want put in paper. We get 3 teams in, we get, wherever that looks like, 4 teams in each, and then everybody else kind of figure it out from there, and that's something they had to get into. But Ross spoke about one more thing about making money, and that opportunity for games is the flexibility on the times the games is happening. He kind of spoke about that, and us being locked into that big noon 12 for Texas, and us basically carrying the big noon program. That's something we've been saying. He's not happy with it, but at the same time, looking at his quotes, not much going to change.
You can't do nothing about it. And this is what we've been saying, is that, there's been talk about the fact that the Ohio State doesn't want night games late in the year. Yeah, late in the year means we don't want Ohio State, Michigan. There's a certain group that doesn't want Ohio State, Michigan, when it's freezing cold outside, played at night. So that's almost guaranteed to be in that big noon slot. I guess a potential for it to be at 3:30 if Fox didn't have as much power, but it's almost guaranteed that's going to be the big noon slot. But these other games, like a Texas Ohio State game, it should be a night game or a 3:30 game, but because Fox has first selection, obviously they're going to pick that game. And I mean, it's just based on Ross's response, it's clear that right now that Ohio State has limited wiggle room, but they want to wiggle. So, and who knows, maybe you have to wait out the current contract. But it's a Fox issue. And I want to keep putting pressure on them, even if they don't feel that pressure, even if they don't feel any bit of this pressure. I want us to continue to be loud on social media, not show up to Fox Big Noon pregame, show up to College Game Day, and let's do whatever we can. Let's do our part And as Ross is trying to do his part, he tried to move the game to Sunday night. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen, but he at least tried, right? He took a shot at doing something a little bit innovative, a little bit different, and it was still stuck at that big noon. And I'm glad that he was clear and wasn't super politically correct in saying that, you know, it is a problem. It is an issue. And they're trying to do whatever they can to solve it, which makes it clear. It's on Fox right now.
Yeah, it's on Fox. I mean, all right, basically it's like we signed some contracts with these slots. We're stuck in on the Big Ten commissioner knows. I'm working on it, but right now, you know, we stuck for a handful of years, but we'll see how it goes. But of course, Buckeye Nation, we did get a commit. They said Coach Johnson was asleep. He must have listened to our podcast. He went ahead and signed him a defensive lineman for the 26th class, and that's Kahari Water out of the California area. I think it's like the LA area in California. Got him a DN there. And then also looking in the future, we got us a running back, Elijah Newman Hall, running back out of Tampa, Florida. But he's not into the 28 class, so he's a young guy that you know wanted to kind of, you know.
2028 class commit.
That's how kind of right. We'll see if he sticks around for that long. But maybe, maybe it's not a bad spot to be. But you know, he kind of jumped on the sun. But I also need to shout out Lee Corso. We talked about it before, but now it's official. His final game for college game day will be Ohio State versus Texas week 1. I guess his first game that he did the big head drawing was an Ohio State game. Only fitting that his last game is coming to see the Buckeyes as well. So shout out to Lee Corso.
Yeah, shout out Lee Corso, a legend. All right, and again, we're showing up for Lee Corso. We're not showing up for Big Noon. We're showing up for the game. We're not showing up for the game. Big Dude.
Yeah.
So
pin our foot down. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, that's our show for today. Please follow us on all platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Please tune in with us. Write us questions. Talk to us. We love to see it. We bring it up on the show. We'll shout you out as well because, hey, that's what we do. We're good Buckeyes. We want to talk to our guys. So we're going to end this show as we always do with a nice OH.
Ayo.
Go Bucks. Talk to you guys soon.
Go Bucks.